Hi, I'm Megan, and you're listening to Two White Girls, stumbling through the current political and social climate. Hello, everyone. We are back. It is Megan and Katie.
Hey, y'all.
Hey. Thank you to everyone who is a first-time listener, and welcome back to everybody who has been listening before. If you don't know, this is our fifth. Is there a fifth episode?
Yeah, I think so.
Fifth episode, and we're gonna start a little bit of a series. We're gonna call it the War on Poverty. And so Katie and I are gonna take that a couple different places, and really just dispel, I think, some myths that people may hold about people in poverty, government agencies, government assistance, the economy, a lot of things like that, all that fun stuff. And today we are going to start with government assistance. And I think there is a lot, even in really progressive, wonderful people, there are just a lot of misconceptions or just things that people don't know about government assistance. And due to, both personal and professional experience, Katie and I actually have a lot of experience with government assistance, getting on government assistance, helping people navigate government assistance. And then shout out to our good friend Elisa, who also helped us out, gave us some great information from the public health sector. Woo woo. So we're going to dive into that. Thanks, Elisa. Maybe she'll come on and be a guest sometime. I don't know. Yeah. Fill out that form, Elisa. Okay. So the way we got our name was in the 1960s, President Johnson started a war on poverty that came from Dr. King's Poor People's Movement. So when Dr. King died, he was actually working on his second major civil rights movement, which was for all people in poverty. And I think that's just something that a lot of people don't know what he was doing when he was assassinated, because he didn't finish it because he was assassinated. And President Johnson used that as kind of a Dr. King's death as a way to springboard this war on poverty. And what he was saying was we were going to end poverty. When Katie and I say war on poverty, we are referencing actually this very quick shift from the 1960s, the 70s, and 80s on to today, where really there is an attack of people who are in poverty, whether it's rhetoric or the way that things are set up, bureaucratic systems. So we'll get into all of that. So we're kind of taking a play on what President Johnson wanted to be a positive thing, and opening hopefully eyes and our own eyes to what a lot of people go through in the United States. So we are starting today with what is benefits. We're going to go over Medicare, cash assistance, food stamps, WICs. Tax refunds are a form of government assistance, people. Did you know that? Yeah, it is true. And also we might touch on, but this will probably be later in the series, how sometimes those things keep people trapped in a welfare system or cycle.
And it is important. I'm going to jump in, Megan.
Yeah, do it.
It is important that calling anti-poverty programs that are run by the federal government as welfare is incorrect. Mm-hmm. That is an incorrect term. It honestly doesn't mean anything. It is a term used to hold people down and to say different things are welfare. If you look at the definition of welfare, you're going to see that any government assistance is welfare. Your tax refund is welfare. Any homeowner loans, tax breaks you get is welfare. Anything
the government
does
is for the welfare of the citizens. That's where that word comes from. Welfare. So it's for our welfare as citizens.
I think a better term would be an anti-poverty program.
I like it. Let's start using it.
Public benefits program.
All right, solid.
Anything. Like, I don't know, the Affordable Care Act.
It is
struggling. Yeah, we'll get into that later.
We'll get there.
It's fine, everyone.
Casual.
Those are all quote unquote welfare programs, but we are talking about anti-poverty programs or public benefits programs because they benefit the public.
Yep.
And we'll get deep into it in a minute.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
yes.
Sorry.
No, don't. Why are you sorry? I think that's really important. So I'm really glad you said that. Actually, welfare is for the welfare of the people. And lately in my life, I have been very obsessed with this question, in general, not just with politics or what, every aspect of my life. What is the goal? And I think a lot of times when we talk about public assistance or even welfare or the government, where our issue as Americans stem is that we don't always know what the original goal of something was, or we don't know what the goal is, and then that conversation gets muddled. So the goal of public assistance is fiscal responsibility. And that gets really muffled in a lot of rhetoric as to what fiscal responsibility is. But at the end of the day, we always talk about the economy like it's this big monster that we can't control and we're not a part of, and that like looms over us and is sometimes nice to us and feeds us and sometimes eats our heads off. But a big light bulb moment in my life was realizing that the reason why economy is under social studies is it's the study of us as people as well. We're the ones who control that. So when people are poor and not spending money, the economy is bad. And when people have money to spend, the economy is good. And it really is all about psychology. So all of these programs actually do, and we're going to share a really great Washington Post article written by someone from the Clinton administration. But there's a ton that you can read on this.
Oh my gosh,
a ton. There's so much stuff that so many economists that talk about how these programs are created to stimulate the economy. When people are poor, whether it's you or not, that's hurting you because the economy is not as strong as it could be because people are not spending money. That was the idea behind tax refunds, that people were not spending money, so they thought they'd, especially after Christmas, because they didn't have any money, so they thought they'd start this tax time, get this influx of money, and people would spend it. That's the whole point. If you save your tax refund, you are not doing what the goal of the tax refund was, which was to stimulate the economy after the Christmas holiday season.
Right. And I think to touch on this a little bit too, to add some perspective, we see these articles all the time about how millennials are killing certain portions of the economy. Like we're killing like Macy's or like something stupid. Like we love avocado toast, so avocado's going great.
Yeah. Good job, avocado farmers.
Like, we're not going to Applebee's, so then Applebee's is dying.
But I mean, there's a reason Applebee's, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, but then there's also this whole fear behind student loan debt because there's a mixture of student loan debt. There's private student loan debt and public student loan debt. You could also call student loans, federal ones, welfare. Just saying, y'all. Anti-poverty program. But there's, that kind of fear is that this generation, the millennials and the Zers, I think is what they are.
Have a lot of financial fear.
Right. There's a lot of financial fear because we aren't able to return as much back to the economy or don't have as much spending value because of all of the student loan debt.
Which is bad for the economy. So the best thing that any administration could do for the economy would be to eliminate or at least really lighten the load of student loans, because you would see then a boost in millennial spending, whether it's housing, travel, tourism, all those things. I think some of those things are dying because they're not great, like Applebee's. Applebee's isn't great. And if you can go to Lucky's in Dayton, or if you can go to Applebee's, I'm gonna go to Lucky's every time. Shout out Fifth Street, every single time. But also, in terms of like not buying houses, not buying new cars, those kinds of things that our parents were doing or able to do. Not mine personally, actually, but a lot of people's parents were able to do at the time that they're our age.
Right, definitely.
Is because we have financial fear. So financial fear is that's why the stock market crashed in the Great Depression. People were afraid. They took all their money out of the bank. Banks didn't have any more money. Human beings created that. That wasn't a monster that like just happened.
Right.
Human beings created that. So anyway, to continue on, the goal of these programs is to stimulate the economy and make sure that people do have spending money to be able to do the things that like buy houses and live stable lives that they're not able to do because they live under a poverty limit. So the first kind of assistance or
Yep.
anti-poverty economy stimulator. There we go. Sounds
Love
like
it.
a superhero. That we're going to talk about is the healthcare sector, and that's Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP. And again, shout out to Elisa for giving us so much great information.
Yeah, definitely. I was Googling stuff, but I was like, I know about Medicare and Medicaid because of working with refugees and because only legal immigrants can access all anti-poverty programs. Everyone, do I need to repeat that for the people in the back?
You might need to.
All legal immigrants can access public benefits.
Which is to say that illegal immigrants cannot.
No,
Sure.
because they don't have proof
A
of status.
social security number.
And some may have social security numbers, but you need proof of status, which is
documentation.
multiple documents.
Yeah.
Like I could go on and on forever about
Birth
this.
certs,
But I just want to, make that point crystal clear for anyone at, Fox News who is confused by how these programs work. So just to go back, for Medicaid, Medicare, and CHIP, it was all created specifically for children. Everything at the core was created for children and then expanded to elderly as well as disabled care. So basically, anyone who is unable to work. If you are a non-employable and you are unable to work at a current period of time, that you could access these resources in order to meet your healthcare needs, because people who are able-bodied and have received care can continue to do work and do these things. So to go off of that as well, if you are employable, but you have healthcare issues that are preventing you from being employable, accessing healthcare that can help you be employable is important. Because if you have jobs and you are making money, what are you doing? Stimulating the economy.
Exactly. Okay. Yes.
So, Lisa was really awesome with the information she gave us specifically with CHIP, which I was less familiar with. Mm-hmm. And she gave us some really great stats about how, it disproportionately, it covers, Hispanic children and Black children, mm-hmm. Compared to a quarter of white or Asian children. So that, the poverty issue and the poverty line disproportionately affects certain races. And so then when you think of the average Medicaid, Medicare, CHIP user, you're thinking of someone who may be Hispanic or Black. You are not thinking of a white person. Well, white people also access these resources.
Yes. And I think it's important to say, for people who really don't know or have never experienced this, Medicaid is for people who work under the poverty line and their families to access health care. CHIP is for children of families who work over the poverty line, but for whatever reason cannot afford or access health care. Whether that is that your work doesn't provide the health care, you're not eligible for the ACA, whatever the reason is, you're falling in a gap and your child is not able to receive health care.
Right. And so I think...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, to give a little more background. Before the ACA, CHIP has been around like a long time.
A long time.
So before the ACA, where it's like everyone's required to be covered, CHIP was like all children are required to be covered. So it was that if you were a minor, you're required to have public health benefits. So that's, I think, a key difference in CHIP specifically, is that it is designed for children. So if you're a family of 4, when you make above the poverty line for wherever you live,
such as $35,000. Let's say it's $35,000. Yeah,
it's really high. Just saying. If you're above, if you're a family of 4, and your income is $36,000.
Yeah.
And your one of your jobs, one of your employables, say there's 2, provide some health care, but that health care is garbage. Like, so much of your income will be taken out, so many more taxes. Like, it just, like, overall doesn't work for you. You literally can't afford to take your children to a doctor. Then CHIP is your automatic, your children will be covered stepping stone.
So
because I don't know, we should be covering children.
well, and also again to go back to, I mean, if compassion is not your stance, which I'm finding so many people in the world it is not, to go back to how it does help and stimulate the economy, to go back to that idea is that if people are sick, they can't work, and also that our emergency room doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals are you saw like a 34% decrease after Medicaid and CHIP in non-emergency related illnesses coming into the ER. And non-emergency related illnesses make the ER less safe for people who are coming in with emergency related illnesses because it just overcrowds their system. And that's still really much of a problem, but Medicaid and CHIP, at least in Ohio, I just saw this stat, because Ohio is a huge Medicaid state. And we're kind of teetering that right now, with some of our lame duck politicians. But I think that 34% decrease was really, really important to safety in general. So, and then Medicare covers the elderly. And I mean, that just covers literally anything that the elderly might need, especially when it comes to nursing homes and things like that. Especially people who don't have families who can take care of them.
Well, and even if you do have a family, if you're that same family of four and then you add a grandparent.
Yeah, who's dying or has diabetes or.
Right. And I mean, I'm sorry, we're all learning. The older you get, the more healthcare problems you got. Exactly. So it's like, this is happening. Like, it's, it's a drain on the economy to not provide these services.
Yep.
And that, at the end of the day, is the message overall.
Done and done. So yeah, so that's kind of where the Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP come into. ACA made that a lot more all-consuming, and we can get into the ACA in a little bit.
Yeah,
in a different time.
Different time.
Exactly.
So to move on to our next, because all of this we'll be writing a whole blog, tons of like where to look for more information or to ask questions. We're gonna move on to cash assistance, which I think a lot of people really don't understand because A, they've never received it, B, they've never tried to apply to receive it, or C, they just don't understand what it means. Like,
or knew that it existed is really
$3 bills falling from the sky.
Yeah.
So cash assistance was created as a result of the Great Depression. People were unable to purchase anything. And we'll get into food. That's a different subject.
That's a whole, yeah.
But they were unable to pay their bills, rent their home. They were unable, to live their lives. So cash assistance program was created. I know people have thrown around the word TANF. It's temporary assistance for needy families, which is cash assistance. And that is for families with minor children. They can access that, but it has a lifetime. So once you've accessed it, you can only access it for so long. An important caveat for me to just shout out real quick, for refugees, they can only access it for up to 3 years, their entire life.
I think it's also important to note that when a federal grant is given to a state, there's only a certain amount of money. So some families that can grab, it's like first come, first serve. So one family might be able to grab a hold of this. And that's actually true of college assistance and things like that too, because we ran into that with my husband. There were things that he qualified for, but the grant's out. So this is just a grant from the federal government. Once it's gone, it's gone. So there are families who might qualify for it, but because other families are using it, there's a limit. There's a limit to what it is.
Right. So that's why you'll hear people being like, well, I qualify and I went down to apply for it and then I was denied because of XYZ. And it's like, they also may have just ran out of the funding that they have available to them at any point in the fiscal year, because it gets dumped also based on your results. So the more money they have, is based on how quickly people get on and off of it.
Yes.
So if you're on it for that whole 3-year period or 5-year period, depending on your situation, then once you're off forever, first of all. And second of all, are you prepared to take up where you leave off? What's really important that it's supposed to provide assistance to needy families so the children may be cared for. And it also is to supply parents with, or single adults with, job preparation work. And then, I mean, the whole initial act that we operate off of today was built and created in 1996. And so it's this whole nonsense about like so many things that today it's like, are you kidding me, about like pregnancy? Like they don't want children out of wedlock, and they want marriages to stay together, and they want all this other stuff, which I'm sure that's nice. That sounds great for everyone. But like, we're not in a perfect world. And so let's be realistic.
It was very religiously tied, maybe is what
Yeah,
I'm trying to
and
say.
especially, I don't know, when you're
Evangelically
locking
tied.
up a certain proportion of males,
Yeah.
you're gonna have, you know, a lot of other issues. Just saying. Shout out to that.
It also has not it's not, since 1996, not gone up much for, or adjusted for inflation, which is huge, because inflation in the last 20 years has skyrocketed, which is a whole, again, another economy thing. So it's not enough to lift people out of poverty. It's not enough to keep you sustained for, years and years and years. It's literally like a quick boost. You need this,
And
take
I
it.
just want to give
go.
an example of a reality. I would have refugee families who would be on this, large families, like we're talking 7 children.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, 7. And they would be making, on cash assistance, maybe $1,000 a month. Not $1,000 a week, not $1,000 a day, $1,000 a month. It's the rent. Just, that's instantly it. So it's like, okay,
It pays
maybe
a
a
bill
utility here and there.
It pays a
But
bill.
I'm just like, all right, everybody. TANF cash assistance isn't just this free money from the air, from the government, just landing on our laps.
Exactly.
It is temporary assistance, and it's built that way. It's built to be difficult to get. It's built to be difficult to keep. And it's income based. So if you have anyone else in your household working, you have a roommate who's working, you have a teenager who gets a part-time job, whatever, you start paying taxes, that money gets cut. And it's really important to understand that it gets cut deep, even if whatever you're making is still below the poverty line. You will make more money working a part-time job than you will receiving TANF.
Yeah, definitely.
So people who are on TANF and all of this nonsense about how it's just free checks and free money, I'm sure if you're able to scam about 30 different systems at the same time, then
honestly, good for you. That's a full-time job in bureaucratic self, but
yeah, because these TANF programs, they have requirements for work study. They have requirements of like, some places will offer daycare, some states won't. It's nuts. And there's all these different things that like you have to do in order to get this money. You make one mistake or there's one error in the system and it's cut. And then what? You get evicted? Like, it is not a system that is built for people to live off of forever. It's temporary assistance.
Temporary for needy families. So next up, speaking of quick assistance to get you to pay the bills, food stamps, or SNAP. Again, created during the Great Depression. You're going to see a lot of these are created during the Great Depression because the economy needed a boost. So we created our superhero stimulants. And it's changed a lot over the years, to, employment guidelines, health, family size, all of that. But food stamps are exactly what they are. They're not stamps anymore. They're in a nice little card. But the important thing to note, or I think an important thing to note about food stamps that people don't always know, is that there's a limit on what types of food you can buy. I'm at a Kroger a lot that has a lot of people who are on food stamps, and if you get behind someone in line, who's paying with food stamps, it's going to be a back and forth of like, do food stamps cover this? Do they not cover this? And you can tell that people who have, been savvy with the program for a minute know, but I mean, you can get up to the register and have them say, well, this doesn't cover that. So they might pay for some with food stamps, some with their own money, or they might have to put things back. So it can, I think kind of can be an embarrassing situation, but it's not as if you can't buy like alcohol and food stamps, nothing like that. I think there's just a lot of misconceptions.
You can't buy tobacco.
No, nothing like that. It's really limited, the junk food that you can buy.
Right, because also let's talk, junk food's cheaper.
Yes, always.
You can buy massive quantities of horrifying junk food,
chips that are gonna feed your kids at the end of the day and keep them like semi full through the night. Versus something that's really going to make them nutritious. Right.
And it's also like, do you have the ability, if you don't buy that junk food, to cook whatever other food? Like, are you living in your car?
Yeah.
Like, are you living in a hotel temporarily? Like,
or just do you have a working stove? I mean, if a stove breaks, that's really expensive
You might not have been able to afford to pay your gas that month, and it's June. You don't need that heat. It's fine.
Yep.
So your stove just doesn't work.
Yeah. So it can be just, it is something that's really important for a lot of people, but it is important for people to know that it's not, these are not some systems that if you don't have to be on them, they're not easier to be on. And I think the other thing with food stamps, that I hear a lot. Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I really just lost my train of thought. Yeah, and I'll think of it. Well,
I think something too for SNAP that's important. It's supplemental nutrition. Something program. I don't remember what the A stands for. It's fine. It is a way of keeping people fed. And specifically, who is it keeping fed? Children. And there's another supplemental program we'll talk about in a minute. But the whole point of this program is, if you have people who are working and you want them to stay working, what is a good way of doing that? Making sure they're fed.
Because you're not going to be able to go to work if you're dehydrated or, absolutely.
If you're sick all the time, because of malnutrition, then this is a program that's supposed to be supplemental to provide you with the nutrients that you need in order to live the life and to stimulate the economy, because that's what we are. Good old economy stimulators.
Yeah. Oh, this is what I was going to say. One of the mommy groups I'm on Facebook, a mom recently posted, and her income had gone up by I think annually $3,000. So after taxes, whatever that is, and therefore she was going to be receiving less than half of the SNAP that she used to. And I'm not sure like exactly what her situation is. Obviously, I don't know her personally. She's just posting it on Facebook. So she was asking for just like budget savvy places to shop and new places, as they were basically rolling back her SNAP and telling her that eventually they'd like to get her off SNAP, because again, the goal is not for people to be on it forever. Though clearly she was very nervous, because $3,000 more annually is not a ton of money to then just be paying for food by yourself all of a sudden. So people were giving her ideas. Aldi is thebomb.com. Shout out to Aldi. But I think it's just important to know your income goes up a little, and just like we all feel those tax brackets. You can get kicked off these programs, or just a lot lesser, and that's a hugely budget crazy thing.
I just want to point out something. I did math real quick. I divided 3,000 by 52 weeks. That's an additional $57 a week.
Yeah, that's nothing. I mean, that's chump change. I think I spent that at Target yesterday.
And it's like food. Right, and I'm like, that $60, $57 is a big deal.
Yeah.
And her SNAP was probably getting cut in half.
Yeah. Well, she said more than half. Yeah, she said I'm getting less than half.
So then we can just know that that's ultimately way more than that.
Yes. And not to breach on your area of expertise, but I do know that you you did say when we were talking about this episode, you have to have lived in the United States for 5 years if you are a legal immigrant and want to be on SNAP. Your refugees cannot take SNAP and until they've been here for 5 years.
No, they can.
It says people who have lived here 5 years.
How do they eat them? No,
I don't know. You tell me.
It's that. Okay, so refugees are special status.
Got it.
Everyone
but
shout
legal
out.
Immigrants.
Special status. Legal migrants.
Yes.
Cannot access SNAP
until 5 years.
Depending. The 5-year mark for refugees is when they become citizens. So all of the benefits really open up then, technically.
Yeah.
But again, with like cash assistance, it has this window of time. So if you've used it, you lose it.
You can't use it after that. Okay.
With SNAP, it's a little more tricky. It's just they, like you saw for the woman on your Facebook group, you get kicked off super easily.
Very quickly, yeah.
But compared to cash assistance, it's a much different game. Because, like, with food stamps, if you have food stamps and you have cash assistance together, and say you're staying with someone or you're in, like, some sort of supportive housing, you would use your SNAP and your cash assistance together to buy your needs. So, like, hygiene items, household items, you know. Everybody needs a toothbrush. Okay, guys, calm down. Also, simple pleasures are fine. Just want to, you know, it's okay. But, with SNAP in particular, it really can get cut pretty quickly.
Yes.
Now, if you're on both services and your income didn't drastically change, they might get cut slightly. But overall, if you break it down by your like pay per hour, SNAP and cash assistance are so low. They're like $2 an hour. Like it's really not.
It's not a ton.
Comparative.
No.
To reality. And something so simple as the caseworker at your public benefits office enters something in incorrectly, they can get kicked off.
Oh, and that's true of all of these. I mean, bureaucracy again is really rough. You're going to be on the phone for a long time. And actually, I have a situation I want to reference, but we'll get there. The next thing we want to talk about is WIC, which stands for Women, Infants, and Children. It's a supplemental nutrition program. It basically is helping low-income pregnant women and families with young children supplement the things that they need for infants, especially when it comes to breastfeeding and nutrition.
Yeah. It's children 5 and younger in most states. I think every state, but I can never...
Not sure. I'm sure there's an exception, yeah.
Who knows? But children 5 and younger qualify.
Yes.
And especially pregnant women qualify. But WIC is specifically like formula.
I think it helps get breast pumps. They're not free, but I think it helps get a breast pump.
You can get reduced, reduced support items.
Yes. Like I can with my insurance.
Right. So it's very similar to that.
Yeah.
And then also it's nutritional food. So if you ever go to a grocery store and you're looking at like frozen vegetables, I've seen it, or fresh fruits and vegetables, you see like a price tag, and then you'll see like a WIC price tag. It literally says WIC.
That's the WIC price. Yeah.
That's the WIC price. So then a mom knows that per month she's given this amount. Like this is math budgeting 101. Like talk about a game you have to play. But like, you know, you can buy 6 bags of these frozen vegetables at 50 cents a bag versus I'm spending like $1.50 with my Plus card, whichever kind of grocery store I'm at. So it's all designed. WIC in particular is designed, I think, the most interestingly compared to all the others.
I agree with you.
It is income based, like everything else, but it is supportive of women, and especially women with young children. Well, now, is it as perfect as it could be? No. Is it that much support? No. But it actually is something.
Of the systems, this is the one I probably like the best, we'll say.
Definitely.
In terms of how it works and the use and user-friendly. I think that's really important because of 2 reasons. One, and every pediatrician and psychologist and educator will tell you this, the first 5 years of a child's life are the most detrimental and critical to their health and to their educational future. So if you miss nutrition in the first 5 years of your life, or you miss really any of those basic needs in the first 5 years of your life, it is really hard to come back from that. And I see this in kids all the time. I mean, you can point to kids who had solid, stable nutrition, or solid, stable, who were read to, whatever, or cuddled, all those things in the first 5 years of life. You can still tell at 10, and you can really still tell into adulthood. Because trauma in those first 5 years is just it's really rough. So that's why this program was created. The second thing is, I think, the importance of the ease of use is just because of, postpartum is so real. After you have a baby, your mind is just, it's like a black fog. Not in a bad way. I mean, I obviously loved my time with Charlie Joe. I'll love my time with my second child. It's not that. There's so many hormones still going on. There's so many emotions still going on. You have to be very careful of a bureaucratic system with women who have just had a child, because it's just a lot to keep track of. It really, really is. Your brain's not 100% there. It's 100% in 500 different places.
Right. And also, I don't know, anxiety for the brand new baby you have.
Yes. Yeah. And postpartum depression. I mean, people struggling with postpartum depression, and that can be completely real. So I think the ease of that program is really, really important. And yeah, the first 5 years, if you want to make any difference in any child's life, the first 5 years is where to hit it. Every single time.
And I want to point out, I mean, we were on WIC. My family.
Ooh, WIC.
When I was a kid.
And look how Katie turned out. She's beautiful.
And look at me, I'm brilliant. Mostly normal. So
well-fed children, ladies and gentlemen. Well-fed children.
Just saying, I loved potatoes raw.
Yeah.
My mother was really freaked out by it. But I survived, and look at me now.
But look at you now. Yeah, because there's no shame on being on these programs. Infants are expensive. And all of a sudden.
If you're poor.
Yeah.
Like my parents were, but my parents were in college. We weren't on it for long. We were literally on it because we needed to be, and then got off it once my dad graduated and got his job as a professor.
Which, in a perfect and ideal world, this
had to come up.
That's how it would work for everyone. Is you're on it when you need it.
That's not reality.
It's not at all. Not at all.
That it works.
But ideally, when you think about these programs, that's what you want. Right. The next one we will talk about is supplemental security income. Hopefully SSI. Hopefully Social Security pays monthly benefits, but I think that's another one of those words the news just like throws out there and like scare tactics. So we can break it down. It pays monthly benefits to people with limited income and resources who are disabled, vision impaired, 65 or older. Disabled or vision impaired children can also get SSI. It's not based on any work experience or anything like that, based like regular Social Security benefits. Regular Social Security benefits are different, and you qualify in a different way because you pay into that. No, you qualify. It's not qualifying. You pay into that for your entire employment history, and then should be getting that check out. And it's not necessarily working like that anymore. This is different. Supplemental security income is just what it sounds like on top of that, and it's not anything you paid into or that's based on what kind of job you had. It's based on your disability or your need.
And so there will be a lot of people who are over the age of 65 who may have been homemakers, or other people who may just not have the income ability that others have had throughout their lives. It could be people who got disabled at a certain age and then have just been on it. So a lot of the times SSI will work well with SNAP and Medicaid to ensure the person is fully supported. So like SSI would pay for their rent, SNAP will pay for their food, and then Medicaid will cover their healthcare expenses.
Yes.
So it's kind of like those three are designed to like live together, knowing that this person will never be able to work. Now, if someone's family is going to support them, then they may not be able to access any of this.
Or even if you have assets. If you have, because I know when we got Josh's grandma on this, and Medicare to be in the nursing home she's in now, she had to forfeit all assets that she had, which was complicated and the best thing for her at the time. And so I think it's just, it's important to know all her assets, there was some family land they had, stuff like that. All of that had to be done away with and put into the SSI and Medicare program, because you can't have assets, even if you're going to plan to give them to your family, or you're not planning to use them, or you're not able to use them. You have to be, bone dry, if that makes sense.
And so there are people who are disabled who can work, but the kind of jobs they can get are not going to pay well, are part-time, are a variety of different things. So people can be on SSI and have a job.
Yes.
The amount of money that they're given is based on the severity of their impact, of the ability to work.
Yes.
Not financial need.
Yes.
So they'll look at the whole picture, in terms of, if you're working part-time at Walmart, come on, Walmart, you're not making that much.
Yeah.
And so you do need SSI in order to pay your rent and cover your bills and utilities. So it is important to keep in mind that those that are on SSI aren't going to look one type of way.
Yeah.
Which is why it's also a very strenuous process to apply for it.
Yes, I spent most of my second year of teaching, getting Josh's grandma on it. And it is, very strenuous. You have to be very diligent about the paperwork and really call and check up. And again, when we talk about a war on poverty, people who are on multiple of these systems and have a lot of moving parts, or multiple jobs, multiple things like that, multiple children, it's hard to be persistent with these kinds of, or have a disability. It's really hard to be persistent. I really had to be her voice in being persistent.
You had to be her advocate.
Yeah. And if you don't have an advocate, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get on it.
Right. Exactly. Like, my brother's on SSI. He's disabled, but he's working part-time.
Yes.
And he had my parents all up in that business. And
forever.
My dad would be great to have on, just to speak on the fact that this white professor has never had to really get through any of this. Like, WIC is one thing, and he had my mom.
And WIC is pretty,
it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It was like getting my brother on SSI and Medicaid, because it's a mess.
It's a total
hard.
mess.
And he was like, why is this so hard? And I was like,
why is it so
Let's
hard? Discuss that.
Talk about that.
Let's talk about that. So again, when you talk about fraud and things like that people get so concerned about, I really just, as someone who has filled out this paperwork and been on the phone, I just don't see how that is physically possible.
Yeah, I really just don't understand how you could do it.
It would be 1 in a million for sure. It would be like Russia coming into an election. Just crazy. I thought that was funny. The next one is the Housing and Urban Development Public Housing Program, HUD. And public housing was established to provide decent, safe housing for families. And I think safe is really the key word here. There are a lot of rules with public housing and how you have to keep it up. And I know that because I will have students say things like, our public housing person's coming over and we have to clean up. So there are a lot of regulations, actually, when you have public housing and what it has to look like and be kept up and things like that. And you can actually be fined if it's not kept up correctly. Because it's supposed to be a safe place for, again, your children.
And the waiting list is outrageous.
It is, yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
Years. It's years. Unless you have, like, a combination of different issues, like you're disabled and you're elderly and I don't know what other combination
also taking care of your grandchild or something like that.
Right. Like, all of a sudden you have a minor child with you. Like,
yes.
That would be your jump to the top of the list. Otherwise, you are at the bottom waiting forever. And just to, like, shout it out again, illegal immigrants cannot access.
They don't have the documents.
Service. Everyone.
Just in case you're curious. Public housing looks different to different people. It's very patchwork, based on state and city and all of those things. So you might have public housing very close to you and have absolutely no idea. I definitely have public housing in my neighborhood, And I had it in the neighborhood that I grew up in as well, and they look vastly different. And that's
They
still
really
both
do.
Ohio.
And I think a lot of people are like, well, if it's public housing, XYZ is going to be there. You're going to have bed bugs. You're going to have drug abuse. You're going to have, danger, like all this other
But
stuff.
again,
And that's not
it's not the case.
necessarily the case.
It can be the case, I guess. But there are a lot of people checking up on them.
If you target those populations.
Well, yeah. I mean, if 50% of the drugs are in public housing, where are the other 50%? Not in public housing, friends. But my mom used to always say that. It's not a real statistic. It was just like a thing my mom used to say. But for a point of, reference for people. But I do think it's important to know that public housing people do get checked up on a lot. I think it's once every 6 months, 6 to 9 months or something like that. You have to have a check. So it's just another hoop you have to run through. But I think also the important thing to note is it's better to have these homes in public housing than it is for them to sit empty. Which when the housing bubble burst, and we're still kind of coming back from that, and now possibly headed into another recession, so we'll see where that takes the housing market next. Yep. Houses that sit empty are the most likely for crime, drugs, things not being safe. So I'd really rather have a stable family living there, whether they're renting from the government or not is irrelevant. You'd rather have people who are there for a long term, are going to take care of it, have children. I would always prefer that. I would always prefer to live next door to someone like that than an empty house, or a house that just has a lot of different people riding through, in and out, in and out, in and out. So stability in a neighborhood is shown by how long people have lived there. So public housing does help that.
Yeah, and again, going back to the same theme, that if their housing is supported and they have a stable home to go back to, then they're able to go to work, and they're able to throw their dollar bills into the economy.
Exactly. So those are the big governmental anti-poverty economy stimulants. Another one I want to note is unemployment. Josh and I were on unemployment when we first got married. He was a millennial who did not go into what he went to college for, and we were figuring that out, and UD fired him. They didn't fire him. They let him go. But they decided they didn't have money for him anymore. And that was not a fun time in life. And I will tell you, it is very difficult to get on and stay on unemployment. He had to apply for 5 jobs a week, which is a lot if you've looked at Indeed.com in the area.
Yeah.
And you have to prove that it's a full-time job to be on unemployment. And it was maybe a fourth of the salary that he was making when he worked at the University of Dayton post office, which was not a whole lot.
Yeah, no. I was looking at getting on it in the state of Maryland, and it's
not a lot. It's not a lot. So it's there. I'm very grateful to it because we weren't out of house and home. We are also privileged in the sense that we have family members who would have obviously stepped in and not let us go homeless or hungry or anything like that. Obviously, we could have moved in with parents or whatever. And
that's really not how it is for everyone.
No, not at all. So that's why, privilege. But unemployment was there for us, and but it was it was a full-time job for him to stay on it. The other one is FAFSA, another full-time job to fill out. But FAFSA is government assistance, guys. And it's fascinating to me every year how everybody hates government assistance, but man, do you sign your college kids up for it. Which is great, and you should. College should be free, or at least public college should be. But then don't complain about what other people are needing from the government. Housing grants. Josh and I bought our house on a housing grant, and the whole point was for people to live in our city, and buy houses in our city, so it can continue to become more and more stable. Because we live in a city that was not very stable for a while, and is coming back around. So that's why that was, it'll get there. It's been going well. I like it.
I can't wait to see it.
Dayton. But housing grants, again, are there to stimulate the housing economy, make things more stable, more safe for everyone. It's not a Section 8 thing. We don't live in a Section 8 house. We just have a housing grant. So thanks, Ohio.
And they're everywhere. I mean,
Literally
they're everywhere. They're in every city, especially larger cities or cities that are trying to entice people to purchase homes. They're going to offer more in grants. I definitely have a friend who just purchased a home in Baltimore, who, had taken a home that was at one point a vacant home, that was remodeled. What is that called when you do that to a
Flipped.
house?
You're flipping it.
Whatever. Yes,
Flip.
sure.
Chip and Joanna, come on.
I don't know anything about this.
I watch
But
all the
that,
HGTV.
He was able to get a grant for that.
And there are houses specifically
really
for people
big deal.
to flip those homes as well. The people who
Yeah,
flip and
it
sell
was
those homes.
a nice house, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, flipped houses are.
there's a lot of assistance, and I think the moral of this overarching theme is that there's all these attacks on people who access those services.
But really, at one point or another, we probably all access those services in one way or another, and we are all a part of the economy that it benefits.
And we need it.
We need it. We absolutely need it.
Poverty hurts our economy. It doesn't strengthen it.
No.
So it's like, especially if people are discussing like the tax bill that our current administration pushed through last year, even if it is, those tax changes are beneficial, funding them through cuts to anti-poverty programs is counterproductive because it's temporary. If you give tax cuts to the highest percentage of people who are already making the most money, who aren't giving back as much money to the economy because they have so much of it and are hoarding it. They're not spending that money in America. They're freaking going on yachts in the Tahitian seas.
Exactly.
Like, that's not American money.
No.
I have a couple resources for people to check out on their own.
Perfect.
I watched a documentary on HBO called Paycheck to Paycheck, The Life and Times of Katrina Gilbert.
I keep meaning to watch this. You said it was good.
It was really good. It's about this woman who lives in Louisiana, I think. I want to say it was Louisiana.
Sounds right. One of those southern states.
One of the southern states. And she is a single mom with 3 children. Her ex-husband, the father of those 3 children, has a disability, was unable to work. Something happened with him. They got divorced. She is a CNA and is on food stamps. And she just is going through her life living paycheck to paycheck and barely paying her rent. And then at one point moving in with a boyfriend because both of them were broke and because he had to pay child support. And then her ex-husband finally got a job because he had gotten laid off and then got a job, and so then she was able to get some support, and just super interesting to actually see someone walking through that life, who is a trained professional.
There are plenty of teachers and counselors and people that I work with who are on a lot of government assistance.
Definitely.
And damn it, we are trained professionals.
There's a really, really good book that my mom has recommended that is definitely on my reading list, which is called Hand to Mouth: Living in Bootstrap America by Linda Turando. And it's all started with her writing a blog post, basically, I think a couple years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It was why I make terrible decisions or poverty thoughts. And it was all about why why would she make good financial decisions all the time when, she can't purchase those larger things.
You're not thinking long term. It's like losing weight.
Blowing $5 on Wendy's for a simple pleasure that's going to make her happy, make her kids happy.
Yeah, the frosting.
Right then, versus saving that $5 for what?
A $4,000 down payment on a car? No, that doesn't feel attainable. It's like if you need to lose 300 pounds, you can't say to myself, I'm going to lose 100 pounds. That's not an attainable goal. So it's the same way.
She has a lot of really interesting points for social workers, which is why I'm really interested in reading it, and why she said that oftentimes when she was on these social anti-poverty programs, that the social workers she would work with would just make her feel worse. And so I'm really interested to read that just to see more about it.
Yeah.
My mom highly recommended this book. So,
well, I think it's always important to note that people who work with marginalized in general are often sometimes the worst microaggressors. Teachers, social workers, all those things. It doesn't exempt you. Yeah, I'll have to read that too. So good job. Thank you so much, Mama.
I got that.
The other thing I really want to recommend before we sign off is the more I understand, and my brother really turned me on to this in terms of he's just the logical of the two of us. I only have one sibling, so I got all the emotion, he got all the logic. But he really turned me on to really understanding the economy. And the more I understand the economy, the more I am able to understand why these kinds of programs and just a million other things are important, that progressive movements are working for. And so Freakonomics is a book or a podcast that I would definitely recommend. As well as watching the movie The Big Short. That
Yes.
really opened my eyes to the housing bubble burst and just the way things are built. In our next podcast, War on Poverty, this series, our first series, we'll talk about things that are set up that are actually attacks on people in poverty or the middle class, which is barely existing anymore, if it is at all. Basically, any of us that aren't one percenters. So we'll talk about those systems, but The Big Short is a really, really good place to start. That was really well done, very factually based. And I have never understood the economy like I did after watching that.
That's a really good recommendation, Megan.
Thank you.
That's a good one.
So we'll throw that out there. They got another movie coming out too, Vice, that I'm interested in seeing. It doesn't have anything to do with the economy, but it's Vice President, W's Vice President. So I'm interested to see that. But a similar field. And our favorite, Steve Carell, is in both. So
he's everywhere.
Gotta love him.
Michael Gary Scott.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any more questions, like Katie said, on our blog, Two White Girls Show at blogspot.com, we'll have all of these resources that you can dive into. It's really important. I would also just encourage you to read the books and things, but also, I mean, there's tons on YouTube that just listen to people's stories. If you know anyone, listening to their stories, I think personal connection and personal stories are just the most important to
that's
understanding these issues.
You understand it more. You can actually connect it to a real person, and then it's not XYZ in your head or whatever other nonsense you're getting told. And if you're like Megan and I, who were fortunate and didn't actually have to access a lot of these services, these
or briefly access
anti-poverty programs, right? Like, we were just the fortunate few. You know, if you are like us, you don't actually see the realities of what these look like. And
exactly.
So we can definitely talk more about it, and
and look for the next part of our series. Follow us on Twitter, as well as email us if you have any other questions or thoughts or feedback. And if you want to be a guest, Alusa, fill out our Google form. All right. Thanks so much, guys, for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.